For me, school was like a really safe place. I did very well in school. People were open-minded and people were educated about being inclusive. The real world is different. It's interesting, I often find that children have better manners than some adults do. I have a disability called Cerebral Palsy, and I have a secondary condition called dystonia. So my cerebral palsy is the result of brain damage that took place when I was born, and it affects mostly the right side of my body. It affects the use of my right hand, the way that I walk, and generally stiffness and tightness runs through the whole right side of my body. Dystonia is a secondary condition that the doctors think probably started when I was about 9 years old. And I have spasticity and tremors that run through my entire body. Although my disability doesn't define who I am, it touches every aspect of my life. I think I work really hard to hide my disability and compensate, and because of that, I feel like most people, my family included, don't really know the extent of my symptoms. I have 2 absolutely wonderful children. Right from birth, my children have had to understand and understand that I have to compensate for my disability. I think that my children are probably more patient and more understanding because I have a disability. When I was a child, I wore like the Forrest Gump braces. I wore those on both of my legs. I remember being in school and the teachers would tell you to sit crisscross, and it was very uncomfortable to sit crisscross, and I would try my best. I never wanted to wear skirts and shorts because I wanted to hide that. My parents were always very strong advocates on my behalf. All the way through school, I had amazing friends. I never really had to explain myself to other people because my friends did it for me. My teachers were hugely supportive. I'm sure that people stared and people looked, but nobody ever said anything disparaging to me. I never felt like an outsider. I always felt like I had a place. In the real world, people stare, and I'm aware when people are looking, and I'm aware when people are staring. And there have been times when I have called people out on it in public. So I was on an IEP all the way through elementary school, high school. I was accommodated in university. Prior to laptops, I had a very heavy electric typewriter, which I would fit into the biggest backpack ever and carry on my back with my binders and everything from class to class. My writing speed is about 1/10 of the speed of the average person, and it requires a lot of effort. I did really well at math. It was one of my favorite subjects. Math was one of those subjects that could not be done on a laptop, so I had to do all my math by hand. You know, after a math class, I would have visible imprints on my hands and bruises. My muscles would be sore and tight, and there was really nothing that I could do about that. In terms of phys ed, I was assessed based on my effort rather than my actual physical ability. For me, that had like a huge impact on my life. Because I felt capable, I enrolled in a weightlifting class as an adolescent, and I am an active person to this day. In terms of managing my symptoms, I think exercise is key. I remember as a child, I was going to physical therapy regularly, and then I'd have to come home and my dad would do a lot of the exercises with me. He would stretch out my Achilles tendons, which were really tight. It was often quite painful, and I just had to do it. It was not negotiable. In my house growing up, the words "I can't" were like 4-letter words. I just was not allowed to say it. It was always keep trying. And I think that that is something that I have tried to impart on my own children and on my students. And I think that, when I have a child who is struggling with whether it's a learning task or something physical, I try really hard to be empathetic and understanding, but at the same time, I will often say, I understand this is difficult for you, but you're gonna have to keep trying. And it may always be difficult for you, and that's okay. And you may always have to try harder than everybody else around you, and that's gonna have to be okay. As educators, and especially educators who work with young children, we don't often get the opportunity to see the fruits of our labors. I guess to my fellow educators, I would say, I was the identified kid, and I turned out okay. I think that my life has been difficult. My life continues to be difficult, but I think that God has used those challenges to help me help other people. So when I meet with parents and they have a child who is struggling at school, perhaps they see in me the possibility that their identified child could one day become a successful, self-sufficient adult. My name is Katie Lafosse. I'm a kindergarten teacher at Romeo Dallaire Public School, and this is my story.